Picture the scene. The date is October 28th, 2004. You've just finished school, or maybe work, if you're of a particular age demographic. Quarters in hand, you travel to the arcade to play the new 2DX version, walking past the Third Strike cabs, the deafening explosions of Ketsui's attract screen, maybe a guy old enough to be your grandpa smoking at the Mahjong cabinets. You reach the 2DX cab just as it transitions away from the attract screen, and what you see next likely changes how you see rhythm games forever. Openings in rhythm games aren't exactly a new or novel addition, dating back as far as the PS1 Beatmania ports. That being said, the idea didn't take off in much the same way as other arcade games did. Not for a while at least. Though this period of rhythm game intros was very short-lived, the basic premise was much the same as fighting games. Hook the player in with a quick showcase of its aesthetic, and let the gameplay do the rest. You'd have this supplemented with attract modes showing off some new songs, maybe a leaderboard, but it feels like a properly complete package with a proper introduction sequence behind it all. 2DX Red shook up a formula that many rhythm games had traditionally adhered to for a long period of time. Many games after 2DX 4th style just cut straight to the title screen after booting, a trend that still continues to this day in spite of not needing to rely on disk drives anymore. Of course, it's groundbreaking for more than just the intro, but that's for another video. True to its English sounding tagline, 2DX Red goes out of its way to highlight the start of many changes that would shape the series in the modern day. The intro is no less dynamic, with that smooth scrolling list of preceding titles, a quick synopsis of song genres over a dynamic looking set of polygonal shapes, and that sleek logo that quite literally throws itself into center focus. Beatmania had now grown into its own being, and now it was about to stand out from the pack. Of course, no discussion on rhythm game intros would be complete without the intro. Y'all know which one I'm talking about. If 2DX Red was the Street Fighter 2 of rhythm games, then I'd say this was the X-Men vs Street Fighter. Happy Sky defined a whole generation of players, partly thanks to how memorable the intro was. From that lightning fast flash of blue, to the slow shutter slide opening up to that crisp azure sky, all while constantly barraged with the query of happy, you're immediately thrown into the core elements of the new theme with barely any time to process them. And that's cool. Happy Sky pulls zero punches with letting you know that this is a new era of Beatmania, and it's not hard to see why it stands out so vividly in many people's minds nearly 19 years later. By the release of Distorted, there's definitely a refinement of the formula set by the preceding titles in this series reboot at play. Using a 3D render of the new logo as the backdrop for some wacky camera angles, combined with the very simplistic color scheme of black, white, and gunmetal grey seems super edgy, but it's a nice return to form after the very upfront changes that 2DX Red and Happy Sky paved the way for. Gold plays to much of the same strengths, evoking a specific feeling of past styles that reminds you that 2DX is still a music game at its core. Instead of using the simplistic color scheme, the vibrant golden club aesthetic harkens back to the series' roots in underground music first and foremost, a topic I'd like to eventually cover in other videos someday. It's flashy, it's gaudy, and it's peak music game theming. Rather than the silly pseudo-meaningful taglines that preceded it, Gold opts to go with the much simpler "it's party time." Perhaps this foreshadows the revival of several licensed tracks that ate up a lot of the budget in past years. DJ Troopers would unfortunately be the last 2DX game, if not one of the last big arcade games, to have a full-fledged opening in the game itself, and by god they weren't joking about it being the end. The military theme creates a sense of real do-or-die tension for the franchise, which may have been some dramatic irony considering how this was the penultimate 2DX console game on the PS2. Using Microsoft's Sam in the opening does detract from the finality of DJ Troopers just a little bit, but the whole style otherwise feels like the culmination of several lessons learned from this era of 2DX's new generation. The Wild West of 3D polygons used in 2DX Red, featuring the skyline so prominently displayed in Happy Sky, with the simplicity of Distorted and Gold, all wrapped up with that vocoded announcement of the title. You can tell there was some foresight taken in case this was the end of the road, even down to the ending theme being titled The Last Striker. Alas, the games after DJ Troopers did not follow this trend. While intros were still a cornerstone of console rhythm games for some years to follow, the arcade scene had shifted towards a middle ground of elaborate transitions, with some games like 2DX Copula being the closest thing in recent memory. You still had games like Project Diva keeping the tradition alive, but since most people around this period knew what Vocaloid was if they already played rhythm games, it served more as a celebration of the culture, rather than a preview of the game experience. They're still really neat showcases of what the Vocaloid trends of the period were like, so if anything, it's like listening to a time capsule of otaku history. This starts a trend of intros creating an overall narrative, rather than a digest of expectations for the game. Guitar Hero, of course people remember this series. I've never played it, and I don't necessarily feel nostalgic for the IP like a lot of people whose dads were probably Eagles fans, but it ticks a lot of boxes for rock and guitar fans, plus it's got the Hot Topic aesthetic going on. It's a classic for all the kids who used to say some nasty shit in Modern Warfare 2 lobbies. As we move into the 2010s, both console rhythm games and rhythm game intros become much less frequent in quantity, but that doesn't mean they've stopped existing. A really good example of something recent was with the Final Fantasy game, Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. It's still very much in the same vein as with Project Diva openings, but in an era of games where old head franchises are milked for the nostalgia rather than praised for their history, I can't really knock this game for doing something nice with the formula. New arcade games focus on having a more online approach to marketing, which leads to a revival of rhythm game intros in a very different way. Instead of games having openings at game boot or between attract screens, you have stylized PVs with the game's main theme that release alongside new versions. Sega is probably at the forefront of this, where you have games like Ongeki try to combine the ideas of introducing their new version aesthetic with a very compact representation of the series as a whole. It's interesting to see the original Ongeki be the only game with a fully animated PV, while later versions go with the Melty Blood approach, instead using a mixture of live 2D sprites and some clever 3D visuals. In a way, it shows what route rhythm games have taken throughout the last few years, where a lot of BMS songs use Blender graphics or some other program for their BGAs is the new industry standard lately. I'd have to say that Ongeki Bright Memory has the most interesting looking PV, both from a visual and musical standpoint. Transcend Lights is a very memorable theme for an intro, but the predominantly shattered glass theme combined with Blinding Pearl White makes for a very serious atmosphere that I didn't think would ever see use in a rhythm game. With all that said, I'll throw it back to y'all in the audience. What rhythm game intros stand out to you, and do you think they should make a return in the modern era? Let me know down below in the comments. I'm always curious to see which ones I've missed. But until then, I'll see you in the next video.